my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. This is going to be my second run of videos where I'm using my Canon camera instead of my laptop. So hopefully you will enjoy the better quality of the video. Yeah, so I guess I might as well get started. I have a few books that I finished that I want to talk about. I think I mentioned in my last set of videos that I went through a bit of a dry spell. Have to kind of catch up on booktube videos as well as comments that people made on my videos. So if you've not yet received a reply, I will be getting there. Yeah. But, yeah, I just hope to get back into the swing of things again. And sorry if I'm shaking the camera. Let me get my elbows off the table. I'm kind of got my camera sort of sitting on top of the camera holder, so the camera bag, so it's maybe not the most secure setup, but I didn't feel like messing with the settings on my tripod. So yeah, although I have another tripod. If I need to, I'll use that in the future. I forgot about that tripod. Anyway, I think that I will start out with the stash enhancements that came in. Oh, I forgot one. So I won't do that yet. I left one in the other room. So I will go ahead and get started with one of the book reviews. So I finished it a little bit late for Framed in September, and I just realized I also didn't turn on my mic. Hold on one second. Okay, sorry about that. The sound should actually be better now. I had forgotten to plug in my mic. There is a mic that's in the camera, but this one's a higher quality mic. So hopefully you'll notice some improvement in the sound. Anyway, so I finished Sofonisba's lesson, which I had started for Framed in September, which was a brand new read-along. I can't remember who. It was several people who were involved with it. I know Elder Talk was involved with it. I don't think it was her brainchild. I could be wrong though. There are several people whose videos I still need to watch because I find those videos to be very inspiring. I'm very much interested in art history, and it kind of annoys me that my drop off for like focus and reading happened in the middle of Framed in September, because if you follow my channel, you would know that I have been reading a lot of art history through the year, usually illuminated manuscripts thus far. Did I do anything for antiquity? I know I intended to. I'm not sure. The closest I think I got was actually fiber arts, and I didn't end up finishing the book. I'll end up finishing it next year. That was women's work. But anyway, so Sofonisba's lesson, I'm just going to pull my notes back, or notes out of the back. Very nice book. In the back there is a gallery, for lack of a better term, of all different pieces, works of art, some that are definitely known to be hers, some that are likely to be hers, some that there's some disagreement on, and then some that probably aren't hers. And they go through in order and explain what the provenance is. But other than that, there is quite a lot of good information, quite a lot of lovely paintings in here. One of the things that was amazing about Sofonisba's story is that her father, and I hope I say his name right, Almaquer Anguissola. I'm not sure if they'll say Amacare or Amacare. Anyway, Anguissola. That was her father, and he did something that was very unusual for the era and for the area. So he's thought to have been the first one in Cremona, which is where they were from, and perhaps even the first in Italy to put his daughters into the household of a painter who had no blood connection with the family. And it was kind of a chance to take, a very liberal for the time. And I believe Bernardino Campi, who was the painter, I think he was a miniaturist, if I remember correctly. And He is also thought to have been the first local painter and among the first anywhere to accept female students. Now, personally, mostly Sofonisba is known as doing portraits and self-portraiture. She is particularly known for doing paintings of her family. Her painting of the chess game, which is part of what's shown in the back here, is one of her more famous paintings. It's her sisters playing a chess game and then looking out to her, and there is what looks to be a maidservant or governess with them, and I want to find the exact page because they actually do a nice 2-page spread. Okay, there it is. So that is the painting that they keep referring back to. This is actually the first painting that I saw of hers. I was reading The Collector of Lives about Vasari, and that is where I first heard about Sofonisba. They showed this painting and they talked about her and how he put her, I guess, in his book on the lives of different artists. And he had nothing but good things to say about Sofonisba. Now, what I do like best, so I mentioned I like her portraitures, and she did other things later in life that are more traditional, where you might see religious scenes or things like that. I didn't like those paintings as well. I think her strength lay in portraiture. The other thing that I liked for her is I tended to like her chalk work better than her oils. Even though her oils were still quite nice, I just tended to prefer her chalk. Now, one in particular, it's called Boy Bitten by a Crayfish, and it's done in black chalk and charcoal with white heightening, reinforced later hand and ink reinforced by later hand and ink, oxidized blue paper. So it's there we go. Now, what's cool about this particular piece of art is that it came about via a communication with Michelangelo. Apparently, and I believe the communication was like many of the communications in regards to Sofonisba's artwork, it was initiated and maintained by her father, who kind of think of him almost like as a manager / promoter of her work. And he, I guess, had sent to Michelangelo a painting that she had done of a laughing girl, and Michelangelo wrote back that this was very nice, he liked the expression, but he challenged her to do one of a crying boy, and this is the result. So that's a cool story that accompanies that, as well as just being a very nice piece of art. I also thought it was interesting, first of all, you have the communications with Michelangelo, but also her father, like I said, promoted her heavily, and his promotions led to her being, not being obtained, that sounds weird, being requested by the Spanish court to be a part of the Queen's retinue. And I know she was a Valois. I'm trying to remember. She was Isabelle de Valois, and I can't remember what her name got changed to afterwards. But Sofonisba went to be a part of her retinue, and one of her duties, although apparently not her main duty, was to teach the Queen to paint as a way of entertainment. Now, there is something, I believe they said that after the Queen passed, that Sofonisba was involved in teaching the children. If I remember, I believe that's what I read. So she was there for quite a long time. They even arranged for her first marriage. Now, he ended up dying, I think it was either in a war type situation or on some sort of mission. He ended up dying. And I don't think it was very long into their marriage. But yeah, the Spanish court, she was there quite a while, and they arranged for marriage. Most of her more famous paintings date before that time, back when she was still home in Cremona, but we do still have appears to be a decent amount of her works when she was in Spain. Or at least works that have been attributed to her. Some may or may not be hers. What I found to be even more interesting than her connection to the Spanish court or even her communications with Michelangelo was how first of all, when she was coming back home to Cremona with her brother, it was after her father died. And of course, at that point in time, it would have been the brother's duty to take care of any unmarried sister. So she was coming back home. On the boat that she was coming back home on, she met, I believe he was a captain on the boat, a sailor. And she fell in love with him, and against the wishes of her brother and the Spanish court, she married this sailor. And that marriage lasted. I think that he lived quite a while. So first of all, that kind of gives a sort of snapshot of Sofonisba, who felt independent enough and bold enough to marry against the wishes of every male, every man in her life. Now, I don't know if she had any of her sisters weigh in, but she never returned to Cremona, and I don't think that she really ever had contact with that brother again. But what I found interesting, even outside that, was when she moved, I forget where she went after Cremona. I didn't write that down, but she ended up, once she went to where she ended up living with her sailor, she ended up becoming a mentor and a teacher to other painters, male ones, which is kind of interesting because you would think that would be kind of rare with all the male painters during that Renaissance era to learn from. Now, one of them, Giovanni Battista Antiochon, I'm not sure how to say that. He apparently was drawn by her skill with miniatures, which makes sense if Bernardino Campi, like I think is the case, was a miniaturist. That would have been her original teacher. Also, Pietro Francesco Piola apparently learned from her and really was quite proud to declare himself to have been a student of the most famous female painter of the era. And I believe those were his exact words. Now, the only painter's name that I recognize of the group that they mentioned by name was Van Dyck, who you have all those Dutch masters. That's how I recognize Van Dyck's name. He came to seek advice from her in 1624 when apparently she was a blind octogenarian, which I thought was pretty cool. He later claimed, first of all, he came to talk to her, and he also came to do a portrait of her. Now, they showed the portrait. It looked like it was done like on letter paper. I wasn't terribly impressed, but it looked like a sketch more than anything else. Maybe he did something more in depth that we've lost. But anyway, he apparently later claimed that he learned more from his conversations with Sofonisba than from the works of more famous painters, which I thought that was a really cool insight into the effects that she had on the painters around her, even outside her own skill and her own paintings that we have access to today. She and her father, to be fair, had influence on fathers and daughters that they never interacted with. Their example led to other fathers and daughters thinking about following the same path, and fathers encouraging their daughters, daughters being like, if she could do it, I could do it too. Now, the last thing I have to say about this book probably is, first of all, there's so much in here. There's just a lot of gold in here, a lot of lovely work. It's just, Sofonisba's work has a definite look to it. A lot of it is in the eyes. Now here's the other chalk painting that I enjoy. I believe that's chalk as well. Yeah, black chalk. People think that's one of the ones, maybe not the Laughing Girl, but one similar to that Michelangelo was referring to. But Sofonisba's work, a lot of times, first of all, there is some concern that her sisters also painted. Sofonisba learned, and she was involved in teaching her sisters as well. So there is a similarity in style. There are sometimes when they wonder if her sister Lucia, if we're seeing some of her work instead of Sofonisba's, but we're not quite sure. I believe that this one is not believed to be Lucia's, although I might be mistaken. But with the sister style slash Sofonisba style, there's a very particular look to the eyes. They tend to be rather large eyes, almost Disney-fied large eyes, you know, kind of like you see in Disney princesses. And I'm not sure if it's just a family trait or if it was just her preference in style. Here is one with her father and one of her sisters. I believe that's her youngest sister, who is, what's her name? I always lose her name. Minerva. Now, the one painting I really enjoy of hers, and there's a lot here. This is Giulio Clovio with a miniature. Now, this is an oil on canvas. I believe there was some talk about whether or not he had some hand in teaching her. I have several books on him that I haven't read yet. I'm not sure if you can see it very well with the glare. Okay. But yeah, a lot of beautiful work here. Of course, you saw the one with the chess playing. This is another one. I believe it's smaller, you know, a smaller painting. I forget what size they said it was. But yeah, there's just a lot in here. Oh, this is the full-on of the one that's on the front, her with the book. Now, randomly, one thing that I thought was interesting is the conversation that occurred at one point in the book about the different forms of art and how it was seen at the time. One of the things that was mentioned, this was an idea that was particularly advanced by Titian and a couple of the other artists in his circle, that they disdained oil painting. Thought it was, you know, the tight work and the details, they disdained. They preferred a more painterly way of doing things, very loose, almost like they described like a very masculine, macho, almost like a sword swipe. So it ended up being a very much of a looser style, less detailed. Michelangelo apparently had even remarked that he favored the medium of fresco because oil painting was women's work. Now, I brought this up to my dad, who is an oil painter, and if you've seen my previous video on our little at-home gallery that is all filled with his paintings, you've seen the quality of his work. He is primarily an oil painter. Now, when we talked about it, he could see where, first of all, they were talking about, I forget what the stick's called. He uses it. It's used by some for steadying the arm. Dad says he uses it to keep his sleeve out of the painting. It's this stick, and I can't remember what it's called, and just sort of sits, you rest your arm kind of on it. And I think it was partially that. Okay, what's it called? It is called okay, it's a mahl stick. And painters like, they even showed St. Luke using it, who is considered like the patron saint of painters. They have paintings showing Luke painting with this mahl stick, and the painting, so it was something that had been always sort of approved until later on. There was kind of this sneering at it until that time passed, and you know, people went back to normal, like accepting oil painting without kind of snobbery. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that there was this bias. And one of the things my dad brought up that and particularly when you compare it to frescoes, there is the benefit with oil painting of being able to paint over mistakes. This is another reason why it's easier to work with than, say, watercolors, and that was the example he brought up, because there's not a whole lot you can do with watercolors after they dry. It's a lot harder to fix your mistakes, whereas with oil, paint it over, okay, you're good. I'm not an oil painter, that's, you know, him saying that. And that's the other reason why when you talk about frescoes, they're very much based on, okay, you need to, and this came up in the Vasari book, you need to have the right weather, you need to have it prepared right. That's why Da Vinci a lot of times ran into trouble, because he just was a bit of a scatterbrained. He was brilliant, but not so much in preparing his frescoes so that they would last. I believe that my dad said he even tried to do oil instead, and he said it just didn't work. And when he was supposed to be frescoing, he tried to do an oil there. Yeah, I believe that's what I recall from the conversation that we had. But one of the things I remember from the Vasari book, besides the stuff about the weather, you had to worry about, you know, the wet weather affecting things getting too dry, affecting things, etc. And you had to, once your wall was ready, you had to, you know, get to work before it, you know, set, because otherwise you were stuck. And yeah, that was one of Vasari's greatest attributes, was people knew that they could depend on him. Okay, if he said that his work would be done at X time, it was going to be done at X time. Now, he did have people working for him, but he saw that as being a part of, you know, a lot of artists had art students working under them who had different, had put hands on their artwork. That's why you can never quite be sure which part of what painting is fully one master's hand versus the students. I think the main parts are usually the masters, but that was a part of the way they taught painting them, was having these apprentices work underneath the masters. I believe there's actually is it Michelangelo in particular? There was a famous painting where this one young artist who eventually became famous, I'm pretty sure it's Michelangelo, because it came up in the Vasari book, and Michelangelo was like Vasari's, you know, absolute hero. He had like a man crush on him. But I remember hearing that there was one aspect that Michelangelo added to this painting of his masters that kind of like blew the master's mind. He ended up moving to a different area of art after that. I had to go look at the book again, but I seem to remember that was what I read. I mean, I could be just spreading like complete fabrications based on my memory, but that's what I seem to remember. But I thought that was interesting when we had this conversation. We're also talking about the amazingness of Michelangelo's work in stone, which is also something that you couldn't go back and work over. Your, you know, knife slipped and boom, you're messed up. You know, that's it. There's no fixing that marble. That's, you're done. So that's even more of an issue than with the fresco. So I'm not sure for Michelangelo if that was part of the consideration as well. Not so much the detailedness that people like Titian seem to disdain, but because Michelangelo was quite detailed if you look at the Sistine Chapel. But I think for Michelangelo it had more to do with the idea of it being maybe too easy to fix the mistakes. You know, he could do fresco, which required being a lot. You really couldn't make mistakes like you can in oil. And the same thing with the sculptures that he preferred, because he really considered himself more to be a sculptor than a painter. And that comes out in Michelangelo and the Pope's Ceiling, which is a book I read last year, right after I read the one about Vasari. But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed Sofonisba's book. I actually look forward to when I put together her entry in the book journal. I've already started pinning pictures that I might want to put in there. But yeah, this was a really good experience. I'm glad that I read this. I know I have another book on Sofonisba, but I don't think I'll be reading it anytime soon because I want to read some of my other art books first. But yes, very interesting. I do recommend. So thank you very much for joining me for this video. I hope that you had much fun hearing about this book as I did reading about it and talking to you about it. I will be going into the next book pretty soon after I turn off this video. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining me. I will see you in the next video. God bless. Bye.